Hey everyone, welcome back.
It's great to be back.
So today we're diving into a report that really got me thinking. The shorter working week, a radical and pragmatic proposal.
Oh, yeah, I've heard some buzz about that one.
Yeah, it's not just about like the dream of a 4-day work week.
Right.
It gets into the nitty-gritty, real-world cases, policies, the whole shebang.
The whole 9 yards. I'm intrigued.
Yeah, and it connects this idea of shorter weeks to these huge things happening already, like automation, inequality, even mental health.
I mean, we talk about those a lot, so I'm curious to hear the connection.
Right. It's like this isn't just some nice to have it argues. This is a huge shift that's already kind of underway.
A sign of the times, maybe.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it doesn't shy away from how tough things are right now, especially in the UK.
Well, that's refreshing, at least. So many reports feel like they're glossing over the bad stuff.
Right. It's like, yeah, things are stagnant. People are working longer, A&D harder, and 0-hour contracts are like a whole other issue.
But absolutely. Precarious work is on the rise, wages are stagnant, and let's not forget that huge unpaid work gap that disproportionately impacts women.
Oh, absolutely. We can't ignore that. But there's just one example in the report about productivity that really blew my mind.
Okay, hit me with it.
So they compare the UK to Germany, right?
Okay, yeah.
And they say our productivity is so lower
Yeah.
that if German workers just like clocked out at Thursday lunch,
Thursday lunch, wow, okay.
yeah, they'd still have outproduced us by Friday evening.
Okay, that is pretty stark. I can already see this report making the rounds.
It's a powerful image,
Mm-hmm.
and it makes you realize we're working longer, but are we working smarter?
That's the question, isn't it? And this report seems to argue that we are.
Which is why it's so needed right now, because it challenges this idea that more hours equals more output.
Which, let's be honest, is an idea that's been around for ages.
Oh, totally. So I know my first thought was, okay, shorter work week, won't that just kill productivity?
Yeah.
But the report says, hold on, not so fast.
They push back on that. Interesting.
Yeah. They go into all this research showing how worker well-being is like intrinsically linked to how much we get done.
So it's not about being lazy. It's about recognizing that burned out employees aren't exactly rock stars.
Exactly. It's like you can only run on fumes for so long before you just like sputter out.
Totally. The report actually mentions studies about this. Shorter work weeks can lead to less absenteeism, fewer errors, even bigger motivation from employees.
Really? That makes sense, I guess, when you think about it.
Right, like when you're not completely fried, you can actually focus and get things done.
Right. I know I've had those days where I'm just staring at my computer like, come on, brain, work with me here.
And that's another interesting thing they bring up. Worker output per hour is often highest at the beginning of the day.
Makes sense.
But then it goes down, down, down past a certain point. Those extra hours aren't always translating into more work.
Diminishing returns, kind of?
Exactly. So this whole hustle culture thing might be doing more harm than good.
Interesting. Okay, but what about automation? That feels like the big elephant in the room when we talk about the future of work, right?
Oh, absolutely. And to the report's credit, they don't shy away from it.
Yeah.
In fact, they argue that the UK being slow to adopt automation is actually hurting productivity long term.
Really? But isn't the fear that robots are going to steal all our jobs?
That's the common narrative, but this report flips the script. They argue that automation, done right, should transform jobs, not eliminate them.
Okay, so like taking over those tedious tasks, freeing us up for more creative stuff.
Exactly. Imagine all that time and energy we could redirect towards things that actually require human ingenuity.
That's a nice thought, but I still worry about those who might be left behind.
And that's a valid concern, absolutely. That's why the report highlights the importance of strong unions and worker involvement in this transition.
So it's not just about the tech, it's about making sure everyone benefits.
Exactly. They use the example of IG Metall, a German union. They successfully negotiated a shorter work week alongside adopting automation.
That's encouraging. So it is possible.
They argue it's not about fighting progress. It's about making sure progress benefits workers, not just corporate profits.
I like that. So it's not man versus machine, but finding a way to work with technology to create a better future for everyone. And speaking of better, the report really dives into mental health and well-being.
Oh, absolutely. They make a strong case for how overwork is directly linked to things like anxiety, depression, burnout, all of it.
It's true. And it's costing the UK billions, which is wild.
It is. They talk about needing time for genuine recovery, not just collapsing on the couch after a long day, feeling completely drained.
Oh, tell me about it. That doom scrolling at the end of the day is real.
Right. It's about having the energy for life outside of work.
And I think that's where a lot of people struggle these days.
Absolutely. And the report suggests that regular shorter work weeks could be even better than like infrequent vacations for this kind of deep recovery.
Interesting. So it's about building it into our lives, not just escaping every now and then.
Yeah. Exactly. And that leads us to their point about the gender divide.
Oh, right, because that's a huge aspect of this whole conversation.
It is. They talk about the massive amount of unpaid care work, mostly done by women, that really holds back careers and contributes to the gender pay gap.
And that's often invisible, even though it's so important.
Exactly. They point out that on average, women in dual income UK households are working more total hours paid and unpaid than men work in paid jobs alone.
Wow, okay, that really puts it into perspective.
It does. And while a shorter work week isn't a cure-all, the report suggests it could be a big step toward reshaping those societal norms around work.
Like recognizing the value of care work, making it easier for both men and women to share those responsibilities.
Exactly. And ultimately leading to better work-life balance for everyone, not just one gender.
Okay, so we've talked about the problems,
Right.
right? And we've touched on some potential solutions.
Right.
But the cynic in me wants to know, are there actually real-life examples of this working? Or is it all just like a nice idea?
Well, that's what I love about this report. It's not just theoretical. They've got a whole section dedicated to case studies of shorter work weeks in action.
Okay, now that is what I'm talking about. Give me some examples.
Okay, so one that jumped out at me was this Toyota factory in Sweden. They went down to a 6-hour workday.
Okay.
And get this, productivity went UP.
No way. Seriously.
Seriously. Plus, happier staff, lower turnover, the whole package.
So it's not just about working hell, it's about working differently, it seems.
Exactly. It really challenges those old assumptions, doesn't it?
It totally does. What other examples did they have?
And they talked about Reykjavik, Iceland.
Okay. Yeah.
They did a citywide experiment with shorter weeks.
Wow. Citywide. That's ambitious.
Right. And they found productivity either stayed the same or got better, even with fewer hours.
That's really promising. Like, imagine the impact on people's lives with that extra time.
I know, it's kind of mind-blowing. But you're probably thinking, okay, sounds great in theory, but how do we actually make this happen?
Well, yeah, because it's a huge shift.
Huge E. But that's where the report gets really interesting. They get into the nitty-gritty of making this transition actually work.
Okay, so less pie in the sky, more, here's a plan.
Exactly. And they acknowledge there's no one-size-fits-all solution.
Right, different industries, different needs, it's got to be adaptable.
That's the key. So they propose different policies that could be tailored to specific situations.
Like what? Give me some examples.
So one idea is gradually reducing the legal work week over, say, a decade.
Okay, so a phased approach.
Exactly. Gives businesses time to adapt, figure things out.
Makes sense. What else?
They also talk about giving workers the right to request shorter hours in any new contract.
So it puts more power in the hands of the employee.
Exactly. More control over their time, their work-life balance.
I like that. What about the cost, though? I'm sure some businesses would balk at that.
Oh, for sure. They address that too. One idea is government subsidies or tax breaks for companies that implement shorter weeks.
Interesting. So it's like incentivizing the change?
Exactly. But they also argue that in the long run, there could be cost savings for businesses.
Really? How so?
Well, think about it. Less burnout, less absenteeism, lower healthcare costs.
Oh, right, because those things add up.
Big time. So it's about shifting from that short-term profit at all costs mentality.
Something more sustainable, something that values people as well as profits.
Exactly. And this is where they make a really compelling argument. A shorter work week isn't just good for workers, it's good for the economy as a whole.
Okay, now that is interesting. Tell me more about that.
So their argument is that our current system, this whole work, consume, consume thing, it's not sustainable.
Yeah, it does feel like we're on a treadmill going nowhere fast.
Right. And it's taking a toll on us and all of the planet.
The burnout is real, let's be honest.
Absolutely. They argue that a shorter work week could help us break free from that cycle.
Okay, listening.
Less work could actually lead to less consumption, lower emissions, all that.
So it's about rethinking our priorities, really.
Yeah, exactly. And they even suggest it could boost innovation and entrepreneurship.
Wait, really? How does that work?
Think about it. When people have more time and energy, they're more likely to pursue passions, come up with new ideas.
So instead of being exhausted all the time, we'd actually have the mental space for that kind of thing.
Exactly. It's about unleashing creativity, not crushing it under a mountain of work.
I like that. But realistically, there are going to be challenges, right?
Oh, absolutely. No massive societal shift happens overnight without some bumps in the road.
So what do they say about that? How do we overcome those hurdles?
Well, they break it down into a few key areas.
Okay, lay it on me.
One big one is that short-term hit to productivity. Some businesses might freak out thinking fewer hours, less work, even with the evidence we discussed.
It's that old school mindset, right? Like butts in seats equals output.
Exactly. So the report stresses careful planning, not just chopping a day off and hoping for the best.
So what, like easing into it, giving companies time to adjust?
Totally. Phase implementation, training programs, all that, helping everyone adapt to new ways of working.
Makes sense. Can't just flip a switch and expect everything to be hunky-dory.
Right. And they also emphasize flexibility. Not every job, every industry can be a cookie-cutter solution.
Oh, for sure.
So they talk about flexible hours, remote work, childcare support. Everyone's work-life balance is different.
It's true. I think about all the parents, especially moms, who've had to put careers on hold because that 9-to-5 grind just doesn't work with family life.
Huge point. A shorter week, PLUS flexibility could be massive for them.
Talk about unlocking untapped potential.
Right. Okay, but another challenge is obviously cost.
Yeah, I was just thinking that. How do they address that?
So they have a few ideas. One is government help subsidies, tax breaks, that kind of thing.
To help companies make the shift.
Exactly. But they also argue that long-term, shorter weeks could actually save businesses money.
Wait, really? Explain that one to me.
Think about it. Less burnout means less of those hidden costs, sick days, health problems, people quitting left and right.
Oh, right. Because those things affect the bottom line.
They do. So it's about that long game, not just short-term profits.
More sustainable in a way.
Exactly. And this ties into what I found really fascinating. They argue shorter weeks aren't just good for us, but for the planet, too.
Okay, now that's a new one. Tell me more about that.
Well, they say our whole system, work more, buy more, it's just not sustainable in the long run.
Yeah, it does feel like we're consuming ourselves out of existence.
Right. Longer hours, more resources used, more waste. It's burning us and the planet out.
So a shorter week? It's almost like a way to slow down, be more mindful.
That's part of it. They talk about how it could reduce energy use, emissions, even shift how we consume.
So it's about more than just having an extra day off. It's a whole different way of thinking.
Exactly. And get this, they say it could actually boost innovation.
Really? How's that? I think people just slack off more.
They argue the opposite. More time and energy means more people pursuing passions, coming up with new ideas, starting businesses.
It's not like we actually have the mental space to be creative.
Precisely. Unleashing that potential instead of squashing it under work.
Through shorter week, more dynamic economy, who knew? But realistically, this is a huge change.
It is. They acknowledge it won't be easy, but they believe it's essential for a better future.
Or just more equitable, more sustainable.
All of that. It's about taking back our time, rethinking work's role in our lives.
Creating a world where we can actually thrive, not just survive.
Exactly. And they end with a call to action. This isn't inevitable. We have to make it happen.
Individuals, policymakers, businesses, everyone working together.
It's about demanding a better way of living, a better way of working.
And realizing that we have the power to shape the future of work.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
This report has given me a lot to think about, that's for sure. Hopefully, our listeners feel the same way.
I hope so too.
If you're intrigued by this whole shorter work week thing, definitely check out the full report. It's eye-opening.
Absolutely. It's got even more research, insights, and advice on making this a reality.
So here's to a future with more time, more meaning, and maybe even a little less work.
Cheers to that.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive, everyone. Until next time.